Welcome to another episode of This Too Shall Suck podcast, where we talk about the real of grief, the whole grief, and nothing but the grief. Welcome back, my loves. I am your host, Loryn Denise, and I'm so happy. Yeah, get into these vocals. Thanks. I'm so happy to have you here. If this is your first time here, welcome. I'm super thankful for you. And if you're listening again, welcome back. And thank you so much for continuing to join me on this journey. On today's episode, if you haven't figured out by the title, we're going to be diving into the age-old battle of spirituality versus religion, which I think is so interesting that this is such a topic that people don't want to talk about, or people don't think matters as much in the grieving process, because it definitely matters a lot. Let me just be the first to say. And it's such a argument. It's such a, people can't, it's almost like politics. It's one of those things that people just like to argue about or try and act like it's not there or try and act like they're so different. And so I really wanted to talk about it. And I'm going to bring a very special guest on who I'm super excited about, who we talk about it all the time. We talk about what religion is, what spirituality is, because if you didn't know, I grew up Christian. But of course, being in the South, sometimes you go to real Southern Baptist churches, which I did when I was in Memphis. And so that's how I grew up. And then as I got older, I chose to just continue being a Christian and choosing the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And that's who I follow. And that's the religion that I subscribe to. But I will say that my parents both were like that. My mother more so than my father. But at the very end of the day, they never were like, this is what you have to follow and this is what it is. They wanted us to follow that, and they talked to us about that, and they taught us that, but they also gave us the place to be able to choose, which I think is important. And again, for me, that's what I chose because that's what I wanted to choose, and I learned about it. But I also am open enough to be able to have conversations with people from different religions, or people who don't subscribe to a religion, to learn more about what it means for them, and especially in this episode talking about grief. So I'll be bringing on a guest later to discuss that. So I'm really, really excited. But I just wanted to share my journey of how spirituality or religion played a role in my grieving process, more specifically with my dad, because I think that's where it played a major role, just in that whole thing, because it was such a shock, it being my second parent, and then him dying so quickly after we found out that he was sick. It really, really, really played a major role. So I don't remember if I shared with you guys, but when my dad passed away, I believe it was the week, about a week or a week and a half before, when he was getting transferred from the hospital to the physical, or the, what is it, physical therapy, the rehab, for him to be able to like walk again and pick things up, all of that. So when he was getting transferred from the regular hospital to that particular center, the doctors told my sister that morning, like, basically, if you take him out of here, like, he's going to die. And when she told me that, I just remember being in my room, and there's like a little nook in my room. I call it my little prayer nook or my peace nook, because I'll go over there to read or really pray. And I went over there and I turned on my worship music so loud, like so loud. And I was just on my knees crying and begging God. And I was just like, God, please don't take him. Please heal him. Please, like, y'all, crying on my face, begging God, worship music so loud, like begging him not to take him. And, he got there and he was fine. And, then again, a week and a half later, he was gone. And so when he passed, I wasn't mad at God. I don't have anything to say, because a week or a week and a half ago, I'm on my knees, on my face, begging you to not take him away, because I've already been through this before. And then he was gone. And I know, obviously, that when it's your time, and there's not really much say that you have in it, unless you obviously do it on your own. But I, I just didn't understand, and I had a lot of confusion, and I had a lot of questions, and I was just confused, and so I just didn't pray. I didn't pray. I didn't ask him for anything. I didn't. I mean, I just didn't have anything in me. But because I had a connection with him, regardless whether I was talking to him or not, he helped me through this whole process, and he helps me obviously every day. But even I interviewed, I believe, like a week after my dad's funeral for this job. He was there in the midst of that. All these wonderful things started happening, and he was in the midst of that. He was still working on my behalf, regardless of if I was talking to him or not, because I had created a connection with him so strong that it did not matter if I was talking to him in that moment, because he knew that I was connected to him, and he knew I wasn't mad at him. He knew I wasn't angry with him. And sometimes that does happen. And so I'm not here to tell you that you can't do that, because when you are grieving, whatever it is that you're grieving, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job, whether it's a loss of a person in your life, whatever it is that you're grieving, whether you're grieving the world right now, he knows your heart, and and that's when people are like, Jesus, not my heart, girl. And he does. I don't know why I do those voices, but he does. He really knows your heart, and he knows that right now you just may be having a tough time, or you just don't know what to say, or you're trying to find the right words. And I think that happens sometimes when we pray, is that we're trying to find like the right, like we got to make sure we say the right thing. And God wants you to come in real, raw, and whatever you're feeling. So if you're like, God, this is garbage right now, this is straight garbage. Okay. But I'm gonna trust you. I'm gonna trust you. But I mean, it's the truth. Like, I talk to him, I'm like, hey, how you doing? How you doing today? So about that job, please tell me if I'm supposed to be here or not, just being honest. But anyways, I say that to say that because I created that connection is the reason why he was able to help me get through and work on my behalf, even when I didn't have anything to say to him. And now I've kind of gotten through that hump of my life, and I'm back doing my devotionals and everything like that. But again, creating that strong connection is what got me through. And so I don't even want to say, I can't say that it had to do with my religion, or yeah, it did, because I read the word and things like that. But I think even if I had that spiritual connection with him, because, essentially that's what it is, having that spiritual connection, that is what got me through. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about kind of the difference between spirituality and religion, and how they play a role in grief, or if one or the other plays a role in grief. But we'll talk about all that and more after this break. Are you listening to my podcast right now and wondering, I wonder if I could start a podcast like Loryn did? Well, I'm here to tell you that you most definitely can. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. Number one, it's free. So no monthly subscriptions, no hidden fees. It's free 99. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. So no need to go out and buy hundreds of dollars equipment like I did. You can do it straight from your phone or computer. And Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many, many more. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today, and let's get back to the show. All right, guys, and we are back. And as I said earlier, I am super excited to have this next guest on. Number one, because she is one of my best friends in the whole entire world, but she's just super knowledgeable and talented and skilled. And, we just have so many conversations about everything, and especially this topic. So I'm just super thankful, that she's here, and we're about to have a conversation about it. So I'm going to read a quick bio, and then we're going to get right into it. Cidnee is a proud ATLian who has been practicing tarot for 7 years. Each tarot reading session is tailored to the individual's comfort level. As an intuitive empath with a degree in psychology, Cidnee understands that trust and comfort is pivotal in connecting with the client's energy. Her style is relaxed and relatable as she provides intuitive, practical advice. You will leave her session with a feeling of clarity, insight, and practical, applicable advice. Without further ado, I would like to welcome my girl, Cidnee Rich. Woo, 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 woo.
Hello, you guys. Thank you so much for having me, Loryn.
Of
So
course.
excited to be here.
Girl, thanks for coming on. I need to get some of those horns. So, you and I have had so many just different conversations about what religion is, what spirituality is. And so, what I really wanted to start with, because you talked about it a little bit in your bio, what exactly does it mean when you say intuitive? Because I think a lot of people don't know, and I had to have my own journey, with you to understand what exactly that means.
Absolutely. So I'm sure everyone has heard of a sixth sense. And essentially, that is your sixth sense. Your intuition is your sixth sense. So every single person on the planet has intuition. Some people's is more developed, and that's where I come into play. But everyone has the ability to develop theirs. So I am no special, more special than the next person. It's just that I am developing mine every day, and mine is developed. As children, ours is already very developed as well. But as we grow older and we get socialized into the world, it kind of gets brushed under the rug because it's not one of those things that we can see, calculate like other senses. So it's kind of hard to understand. But to answer the question directly, intuition is that gut feeling that we all experience. Mothers may call it a mother's intuition. That feeling where you just know something isn't right, or you know what, maybe I should turn down this road and it's to avoid traffic and you didn't realize it, or did I leave something at home, and you turn back around and sure enough your phone's sitting right there on the counter. So, or you're dating someone and that red flag pops up and you're like, maybe I should pay attention to that, and then you ignore it, and then a year later that red flag pops up again and you're like, you know what, should have listened to that intuitive feeling that I got. So that's what your intuition is. It's listening to your internal voice, gut feeling, and that intuition is connected directly to spirit, to God. And that is how the more you work it, the more you exercise it. It's just like any other muscle, the more connected you are to it, which is why I'm saying that everyone has that ability. Mine is just a little bit more connected because I work on it, and I use it on a daily basis, and I trust it is the very most important thing, is trusting your intuition.
Got you. That's awesome. So it's almost like going to the gym every day and like you trying to, squat challenge. Everybody trying to build a booty these days. So it's essentially like you're working on those muscles. And so I love your way of explaining that. So I want to talk a little bit more about that because you say in your bio you're an intuitive empath. So obviously you talked about intuition and what intuitive means and how you're a little more connected than others. So can you explain what that means of you being intuitive empath and how that plays into you being able to do your tarot? Well, no, we'll get into that later. But if you can kind of just explain what intuitive empath means as well.
Right. So the empath part of it, empath means, like, we all know what being empathetic means. So if someone is sympathetic, you say, oh, I'm sorry that you're going through whatever. And it's just kind of like understanding that someone is feeling maybe sad about something. If you say, I empathize with your pain, that means that you literally feel their pain. So you feel how they are feeling instead of just intellectualizing that they are in pain. So as an empath, you can understand in a real sense what someone is feeling, whether it be happy, anxious, sad. You are able to pick up on what people are actually experiencing themselves in a real way. So a lot of times before I was aware of this, I would find myself in a situation where I was overcome with emotion. And I just thought that I was an overly sensitive person. I am a Virgo, and we are overly sensitive people by nature. So I would just write it off to that. But it came to a point where I was really being in spaces where I was like, my mood would just switch, and it would be an intense amount of emotion that I would be feeling. And it would be anger, or it'd be irritation that just wasn't mine. Like, I felt fine, and then all of a sudden I'm just through the roof angry. And I had to realize, like, something else is going on here. And so that's when I realized that there was something more to what I was feeling, and that I was actually an empath and a lot of people are, and I'm sure a lot of people can resonate with this. And it's not necessarily a badge of honor. It's actually something that if you experience it, you definitely need to learn how to control it and put boundaries up, because it can become very difficult to interact with people, to be in public spaces, and to decipher what you are truly feeling from somebody else's energy. So that's what an empath means. It means being able to pick up on that you are picking up on other people's emotions, and feeling things that aren't your feeling.
Got you. I love that. So do you think being an intuitive empath helps you in your, because obviously a lot of people read tarot, right? And we're going to kind of talk about that, because I think people hear tarot and they think of like Miss Cleo or something like
Right.
that. And so is it normal to be an intuitive empath when you're doing, these things, these readings, or is it just having that intuition, or being more intuitive? Like, it sounds like you don't have to be essentially an empath to be able to do these readings, but obviously you need to have like a stronger intuitiveness. Is that a fair assumption?
That's fair. I think I could go into a long, very nerdy, mystic explanation of the different types of abilities that you can have to be a tarot or a mystic, someone that reads, or someone that is in the esoteric world. But essentially, anyone that's doing or reading tarot or anything of that nature, they have some type of heightened ability, and a lot of it does come from your intuition. I mean, at the end of the day, the baseline is your intuition. And that's what I was saying comes to your trust. And that's the biggest hurdle that anyone that is a tarot reader or anything else of that nature, that you have to get to that level of trusting yourself and trusting what you are actually feeling, what messages you're actually receiving. Because like I said at the beginning, it's not something that you can measure. It's not like I can go to some, intuitive coach, even though I have had an intuitive coach, and say, hey, is this right? Like, I still have to know, I have to trust myself that it's right, before I can get those answers from a client. So with tarot readers, yes, I would say that all tarot readers are intuitive. That is the skill set that they're using. That is the skill set that they are working on, that they are practicing, that they are building. But there's also different levels to that. So you don't have to necessarily be an empath. You could be someone that is visual. You could be someone that is, you have a heightened sense of knowing. You have a heightened sense of hearing. You have a heightened sense of other abilities as well. So the empath goes to a specific type of knowing, which is feeling.
Gotcha.
So it correlates to your senses, what you're more connected to. So I'm more of a feeler, whereas someone else might be more of a seer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes sense. That really makes sense. Thank you for explaining that a little bit more because you and I went back and forth with this question. I was like, because people are so if you're listening, I hope at this point you should know me enough and you know my thoughts and beliefs, but you also know that I'm open-minded. And I hope that if you're listening to this, you're open-minded as well. What do you say, Sydney, to those people who hear tarot reading or who hear psychic or anything like that, and they're like, "You're worshiping the devil," like because I have, growing up Christian, growing up, Baptist, like old school Southern Baptist, that just wasn't something we talked about. But that doesn't mean like my parents were never like there you use a devil worshiper, if you were doing any
Right,
of that. And obviously you knew my parents and they loved you and they knew, kind of your thoughts and beliefs, and they never were like, you can't hang out with Sydney.
right,
Um,
right.
so what do you say to those people who do feel that way? Like, okay, well, if you're doing a tarot, and who are you talking to? Are you connecting
Hmm.
with God, or you know what I mean? Like, how do you talk to those people to say, okay, I'm not worshiping the devil. This is what it is. I'm connecting to, when I say a higher power, obviously I would assume you're referring to God, right?
Yeah, absolutely. One, I'm not here to convince anyone one way or the other. So that's first and foremost. So if you'd like to understand, that's different. But if you'd like me to convince you, I am not going to do that. But if you are open minded and you are truly wanting to understand and learn, awesome. I'm here all day for that. So um, when it comes to um, what that question, which is what we get or I get all the time. One, I grew up in a Christian household. My father still goes to church, or now, virtually every single Sunday. And my mother, she's would never attended church religiously like my dad did, but she's still definitely someone that would consider herself a Christian, but a little bit more open in the sense of not as devout as my dad. But nonetheless, that is how we grew up. But I have five, well, there's six of us siblings. So we have an array of beliefs in our family. So I've always been an open minded family. So it was never like, you have to believe this way or get out of here. So that allowed us to grow and believe and think. And also, with that being said, my dad has always practiced meditation as well. So meditation is an extremely pivotal part of my practice and how I connect to spirit and to God myself personally. So it's kind of like, we may go about it differently, but we're still kind of in the same realm. Um, to your question specifically, no, we are not worshiping the devil. There's nothing evil about tarot. There's nothing evil about tarot because there's nothing evil about Cidnee. So that's how that goes. That's my answer. So I am the tarot reader. So my beliefs, my heart, my consciousness is what goes into my practice. So I'm not an evil person, therefore my work is not evil. Now, that doesn't say that someone else who has different sets of beliefs isn't using some other type of belief system. You know what I mean? That's that's up to them as a person. But individually, that's how you should look at any type of mystic, any type of psychic, any type of tarot. Inherently, it is not an evil practice by any means. Okay. So I want to make that clear. It's not evil at all. But of course, there's people that have different belief systems and people that, look at it differently. And I won't, like I said, go into try to convince people of anything differently, but it's not an evil thing. And there's always room for education. And even if you were to even go back and understand what some of the practices that someone may feel is evil or scary or dark or creepy, it probably isn't all that evil, scary, dark, or creepy once you go back and see where the cultural significance comes from. It's just that we live in America that has been, we're socialized under a very Christian umbrella, and things seem weird. But if you were born in the Caribbean and your family, you know, is Santeurian, those practices aren't going to be weird or creepy at all. They're gonna seem very normal and very of love. And so that's kind of like my answer to that. It's not creepy, it's not devil worshiping, it's not evil, and a lot of it comes down to the individual practitioner. But at the same time, it's just a misconception of what it is, because there's a lack of education around it in general, and people are just seeing the surface of it because they see it correlated with Halloween and skulls, and they just automatically assume a skull is evil, or you're sacrificing, and the sacrificing mean, it's just a bunch of extra stuff that gets tossed in there that is unfortunate, but it's a lot of sensationalism that comes from Hollywood, honestly.
I love that. That was a perfect answer. Like honestly, I think you made a valid point that it's the person and the intention behind it, because I can be a Christian and I can go to church, but if I'm praying for somebody's downfall or I'm praying for somebody to get hit by a car, my
Right.
intention behind it is bad regardless. And like you said, if you're going to somebody like a Miss Cleo, clearly who was a scammer, then you know what I
Exactly.
mean? The intention is bad. And I think you're absolutely right. There is a lack of education, because I can say, even for me, I didn't know, just of course, again, how I grew up. But because my parents were like, okay, this is what we believe. But as an adult, you can choose what you want to choose. And I decided to, choose following the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. That's what I chose. But that doesn't mean that I've never had conversation with Cidnee to say, hey, what does this mean? Or what exactly does that mean? And like you said, even your father, who's a devout Christian, still meditates. And I do as well. I've been to several, meditation classes. Cidnee has meditations. I'm a part of it, because it's all about connection and
Right.
connecting. And if you're not doing that, no matter what religion you are, whether you're Muslim, whether you're Christian, whether you don't subscribe to a religion, if you're not connecting with God or the higher power, then I don't know what to tell you about
Right.
that. So
Right. And that was also to, and I think you asked that as well. Who am I connecting to? I am connecting to God. When I say higher power, when I say source, when I say spirit, that is what I'm referring to. Some refer to it as divine feminine. Some people see God as a female or a woman. So we, a lot of time in this arena, we say divine feminine because we see God as a woman, a female energy versus a male energy. So, but all of that goes back to, and when I do readings, I say, I will list all those things I just listed, and I say, however you see that amazing energy above us. That's how I say it, because everyone ascribes and sees it differently. But at the end of the day, we all know that there is a omniscient power that is up there, that is guiding us all, and that's who we're connecting to.
That's right. She's right. If you're not connecting to something, I don't know how you function on a daily basis. I mean, let's just be honest about the situation. She's absolutely right. And to kind of go into that, if and again, I know you and I have had this conversation several times. If you can just kind of explain your view on what's the difference between um, being spiritual and being religious, or religion and spirituality, and do you think that you can be both? Again, I know our answer that we discussed, but I would love to just ask you so people can hear kind of our conversation that we had.
Back in the day, I kind of started having this conversation with myself because I realized that I was in a space where I didn't know what I was necessarily believing in, because I grew up as a Christian, but then I realized, well, I'm not really following these practices that I'm supposed to as a Christian. I'm not attending church every Sunday. I'm not reading the Bible. I'm not saying my prayers every night before I go to sleep. I'm not um, I'm not doing these tenets that I'm supposed to be doing to call myself a Christian. Therefore, someone like myself, I don't want to be saying something that I'm not. That's not who I am. So that's where I kind of like started on this little journey of figuring that out more for myself. And My father gave me a book called The Seed of the Soul, which I, to this day, changed my entire world. And it just taught me about spirituality in the sense of um, it being a umbrella of what we are, of how we are experiencing life versus a house. And so I'll get to that metaphor in a second, but spirituality is saying that we believe in something that is bigger than ourselves, just what we were just talking about, and that our souls are here for a purpose. So we are not here on accident. Nothing is happening by accident. And there is a reason that we are here. And that by being here, we are on that journey of finding our soul's purpose. And ultimately, that is the goal, to find your purpose here on earth and to fulfill that purpose. And so when you transition, you are going into a space where you are welcomed, and either you've finished your life's journey, or you may reincarnate and come back down because there's more karmic work for you to do. But really, spirituality, that allowed me to kind of like bust the walls down. And so I realized, oh, I can understand all these types of religions and not have to confine myself to these strict tenets. I can kind of be free. And that's kind of how I see spirituality. Spirituality I see as the neighborhood, and religion I see as the houses. So everyone is in the spirituality neighborhood. You're in the neighborhood, hanging out. God is there. Your connection to God is there. But then someone is the head of the household. And then that's where you have your prophet. And so then that's when spirituality starts branching off into religion. And then religions start having different belief systems or rules attached to them. So now when you go into this house, you have a prophet, or you have a teacher, someone that is giving you a certain set or teaching you a certain set of rules and beliefs that go under this household. Whereas if you went into this household, there would be another set of rules and tenets that you have to ascribe to. So that is how I see the difference of spirituality and religion. I am just outside in the neighborhood, respecting, not that people inside those houses aren't respecting other houses, but I feel like a lot of religions have a lot of things that I pull from and believe in myself, and find a lot of value in their beliefs. But also I know that I don't necessarily ascribe to one specific religion. Therefore, I don't call myself a Christian, a Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, Buddhist. That's why I'm just saying that I am a spiritual person.
I love that. When she told me that analogy the first time, I was like, Cidnee. That's a good one, because it makes so much sense. I mean, you're absolutely right. Those people who are atheists, or who follow, maybe a person or a group, I guess.
Right. It's still a religion.
Right. That's what I was going to say. Are they religious or not?
Right. Because, of course, you have like big R and little r. And then you also have like, that goes back to what I was saying about prophets and people basically saying like, I got message from God, and he told me that this is how you should be living life in order for you to proceed to the next part of life once you're not here on earth anymore, is like the watered down ABC version of religion, right? Like, this person got a message from God and was sent here to spread the word of God to their people. And so in order for you to in order for you to reach the next level, you must follow these rules. And that's kind of like the archetype of religion. And that's what it's interesting is we have the main religions, but that same archetype can be adopted, and it can also be used as a form of persuasion. It can be used in a lot of different ways that aren't always that positive. And we've seen that in the past. We've seen that with people who create cults, and that's how that mindset starts. It's not taking something new, it's taking the same ideas, the same concept, and tapping into people who feel disconnected, who feel alone, who feel like there's no one there for them, that feel like there's no one that understands them, that feel displaced. And that's how, that's why it's you have to be mindful. You have to be really careful about religion, because it can be something that is used nefariously, and it has been used that way in the past, and it will continue to be used that way, and that's why it's such a powerful thing. Religion and spirituality is such a powerful thing, and people know that. And of course we have amazing people that understand that, and they create amazing congregations, and they really help people, and they help the community, and they allow people to feel a sense of home, a sense of family, a sense of connection in a real way, a true way, a lightful way. And then you have people that use that, unfortunately, in a dark way. And that is kind of the age-old tale of light and dark that is our world. And that's why religion and spirituality is something that is such a interesting topic, because it has from the beginning of time been used to separate, to wars, to castigate people, to currently we see that with the white supremacists still using that as not only racially, but they still use that as a huge arm of their organization towards the Jewish people. And even to your point about the other groups, that's kind of like their base. It's weird. It's weird because religious groups will still use hate as a cornerstone of their religion. It's an odd thing. It's an odd thing. So that's why I think that we should talk about it more. We should talk about religion more. We should talk about spirituality more. And it should be something that we feel more comfortable discussing, and be more honest about the power that it truly holds.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think that you made a valid point that religion is powerful, spirituality is powerful, and we need to start acknowledging that and having a conversation about it. There's a lot of things that need to be had a conversation about right now, but I think right now, like you said, with the white supremacists using Christianity, and I think today they're talking about taking white Jesuses down everywhere. Like it's a lot going on. So to have those conversations, to say, hey, this is how I feel, or this is what I've learned. And if you don't understand it, have that conversation, but to not be judgmental, because I know for me, I have a lot of friends who are LGBTQ, and they've said to me, like, I feel like that I can't go to the church because I'm judged, or I can't do this. And thank you, Loryn, for loving the Lord and being open to me, because at the end of the day, like, I why am I going to judge you on something that you did? Because I'm not God. Okay. I'm not the jury, the judge, and I'm executioner. For what is that going to do? because
right.
God is love. And so why would me being nasty to you or not listening to you or understanding your story, your journey, like that's not me exhibiting what God is. And the same thing with someone else who has a different perspective or a different religion or spirituality than me. That's not what it is. And I think that's why religion has gotten such a bad name, because there are people, but again, I think it goes back to you saying intention, who just have a nasty heart or spirit about
Right.
them, and then they attach themselves to whatever religion that it is, and so now people are turned off by it.
Right. Absolutely. And that's unfortunate, you know what I mean? But I think it's also human nature that people that if you don't understand something, instead of asking, which is hopefully the goal, which is hopefully where we're moving, instead of, just inquiring about something instead of just automatically writing it off. Because, I'm super regular degular over here. And everything that I do, to your point, is intention based, and it is all based in the sense of positivity, and in the sense of me knowing that I have ancestors and people that came before me that are looking out for me, that are here with me each and every day of my life. And so it's like interesting, sometimes when people speak of the word spirituality, it's like I'm highly connected to my to my to source, to God. In the sense of, like, every day I'm looking at it in a very clear way of intentionality. Like, everything that we do is with intention. And everything that happens is with intention. And God is literally with us, or our angels, our spirit guides are with us every step of the way. And the disconnection with ourselves and our spirituality is what leads us astray. If we just sit for 1 second and center ourselves, ground ourselves, and remember that we are not alone. We are never alone. And that reminder right there will allow this world to get back in alignment, because we are all connected. And the more people that are in alignment, the more the world is in alignment. And that's the goal of the community that I am of, to get people to understand that you have an ability to really shift what's happening on this planet just by shifting what's happening in your mind. And just by knowing that, by having that conversation with spirit every day and saying, I trust you, I believe in you, I understand that this is happening like it's supposed to happen, and giving up that resistance, because that resistance is what creates the blocks, and those blocks is what creates the turmoil and the pain and the agony and the chaos. And so once that's the goal on our end. That's my goal with tarot reading. That's what I'm doing all the time. I'm trying to ignite that in others, to give them the power back that they have within themselves, because God gave it. It's within them. God is within them. So just remembering that, just reminding them, like, hey, you've got it. You've got the power. You have the ability. It's not lost on you. It's not lost on any of us to make the world a better place. It really does start with the individual, which ultimately leads to the collective. And then here, next thing you know, we're in a different world. We're in a better world. So that's why I think spirituality is a little bit more accessible than religion sometimes, because you can access it within yourself, sitting in your room, sitting in your car, right then, right there. You don't have to, connect with a conglomerate of people, or, go to this ceremony, or, because, there's all kinds of religions that aren't just the main ones, right? So it's not just the three main religions. Everybody practices religion. So that's another thing that should be clear, that it's not dominated just by the monotheistic religions, you know. So we all can be more spiritual, regardless if you were religious as well.
Love it. Well, look, that was good. I was like, do I even need to ask this next question? My God. But no, I think that's true. I think we all can grow and learn more spiritually, because if you grow spiritually and you have that connection, with whatever religion that it is that you are a part of, that's what matters, is having that connection. Because I think you made a good point about being disconnected. I shared at the beginning of this podcast how I was disconnected with God, yeah, when Dad died, because I just didn't have anything to say. I wasn't mad at him, none of that. I just, what do you want me to say? And so I just disconnected. Well, I don't even want to say disconnected to him. I was still connected to him. And that's why it helped me get through and helped me make some of the decisions that I was able to make, even though I literally was not talking to him at all. He still was talking to me. He still was there for me. He still was carrying me through, because of that connection that we had. So I think, you're right. If you connect and we align, it'll just make not only the world a better place, but your world a better place, which is automatically going to make the world a better place.
Exactly.
So of course, obviously, we know what this podcast is about. So I wanted to ask you, where do you think spirituality and religion, what role do you think it plays in the grieving process?
I think it plays a huge role. It's the main role. I truly, I was just speaking about this with you. I truly find it something that I am very drawn to find out more about death and life and earth and what happens when we leave earth. And I really want to understand that more for people here on earth, because I understand that pain, that confusion, that loss, that physical loss creates such a space, such a void, that I really am quite drawn to understanding it more. And I think that grief is, on the other side of grief is joy. And when we don't understand something, it's just so easy to just be enveloped by grief, because we have no answers. We have no answers. When you don't understand something, when you have no answers, when something is so final, such as death, such as a loss of anything, relationship has, as you have so eloquently shown us, that grief is an array of things, not just the loss of a loved one, literally, but it's just it's such a finality that can feel absolutely drowning. And without that source of hope and faith, which is what spirituality and religion provides, you can spiral into that drowning and really, really have a really scary experience, a really heartbreaking, agonizing time. And that pain is just unimaginable. And my heart truly goes out to everyone and to all humanity, because, we're all grieving currently because of the state of our world. And we've all felt it in such a huge way. But spirituality and religion is so important because it allows us to understand that grief is not the end. It's just a part of the journey. And it also allows us to understand this concept called duality. And duality is something in the spiritual community that we speak about a lot. And you can't have something without the other. The yin yang. That's something that'll really visually be able to understand for people. So the yin yang is a symbol of duality. Black, white, yin, yang, masculine, feminine, intuitive, practical. It's literally duality. And in order for someone to truly understand something, they have to experience the other side of it. So just like I said, in order for someone to truly understand joy, grief has to be experienced. And without that duality, without that reference, joy wouldn't feel like it feels. It wouldn't have the same resonance. And it seems kind of like a cruel thing. Why do I have to go through this to feel this? But that's how our human brains work. Our brains need that to understand things. And because of that duality, for our brain to understand things, spirituality is kind of like the balancer there to give you that rope in those times, because it can be very shocking to the senses. So it's that rope to hold on to grab onto. In the times when you can't speak to God, like you said, it's that hope, it's that rope that you're still holding on to. You didn't cut that rope. Just because you weren't climbing up that rope didn't mean that you weren't holding on to that rope. And so that's why it's important. Because when we have a lesson of duality in life, and we go and we have to experience that extreme, spirituality is there to remind you that there will be another side. There will be joy on the other side. There will be sun in the morning. That's why it's important, because we have to understand that human experiences are going to happen and they're going to be painful, but we also understand that human experiences are going to happen and they're going to be joyful, and we're going to grow through them, and we're going to be okay. And so that's one point. And the other point is, like I was saying initially, I'm really interested in bridging the gap between here and wherever there is heaven, however you see the afterlife, because our loved ones, they're not gone. They're just not here on this earth. And I think the more we, one, have those conversations, two, broaden our brain, really think about it, really allow ourselves to understand that life, if this earth is created in such an intricate way, why wouldn't the afterlife be created in such an intricate way? It's the same, so it's like that expansion of consciousness. I read a lot of Deepak Chopra, and that one there, he's enlightened, to say the least. And he's really taught me a lot about just expanding our consciousness and expanding beyond what we think is possible. And I really think that's why spirituality also is very important when it comes to grief, because it can allow us to expand what it means to grieve and do it in a way that is more than just the here and now, and bring in more of the after as well, without being too weird for you guys.
No, that was really good. I mean, I ain't got nothing to say. Because I mean, you said it all. I mean, you said it all. I mean, that rope, I have a whole analogy that I'm gonna talk about in the wrap up, but that I have nothing else to say, y'all. Cidnee just closed it on out for us. I can go ahead and leave now. This is Cidnee's podcast. Moving on. But see, thank you so much again for coming on and just having this conversation again. I know you and I have it all the time, but I really wanted to bring it to this platform because people really need to understand the importance of having connection, whether you call yourself spiritual or religious, when it comes to grief, because it's something that's so important. And like you said, it's not just losing someone. It could be, the loss of a relationship, the loss of a job, anything. And it's so important to have that connection because I promise you that is going to be the main thing, like you said, to get you through. So I just wanted to thank you again for coming on. If they want to contact you or hit you up for a reading, which I would suggest, guys, I got a reading. Cidnee had me crying the whole entire time because it was wonderful. How do they get in contact with you?
Apparently, I do that. I get that feedback a lot.
Because they're awesome. They're amazing. Jeez, Louise.
You can contact me via Instagram at Cidnee, Cidnee _Rich, RICH, for a reading at Arcana, ARCANA.ATL on Instagram.
Awesome. And I think your website will be up soon, right? So they can start booking.
It will be up soon, yes.
So you can book on her website. But I definitely would suggest you guys honestly getting a reading. I was like, okay, Cidnee, just do me a reading. And I've gotten readings from Cidnee before, but this one, goodness gracious, like so on point. The things she was saying were so aligned. And that's how I knew it came straight from God. Because literally right after, and I don't remember if I shared this with you, see, but like right after I got done looking at your reading, I opened the Bible because that's, I do my devotional in the morning. And literally what you said aligned with the word for the day. And my friend called me, who I call him my spiritual mentor sometimes. He called me, and what he said aligned with what you said. I said, God, I hear you. Okay.
Absolutely love it.
So
that's how it works.
That's
synchronicity.
Yeah, come on, synchronicity. That's what I'm saying. So I just want you guys to be open and just know that if you want it to come from God, it's going to come from God. If you want it to come from a tree, it's going to come from a tree. Okay? It's up to you. But see, thank you again so much for being on here. I'm going to get into my wrap up, but thank you. Just thank you so much again. And you all get a reading from my girl.
Thanks, guys.
Y'all, that was so awesome. I just love her. But, clearly I'm biased because that's one of my besties. Anyways, that was just really great. And I just kind of want to wrap up with a few of the key points that we talked about in that conversation. And so, of course, the first thing about this whole, what the whole episode is about is the major difference between spirituality and religion is that I love that analogy that she used of being inside the house versus in the neighborhood. So, really, just the major thing is just I don't even want to say the rules, but I guess that's what I can say. It's just how you decide to follow whatever your spiritual, however you choose to follow God or Buddha or the higher power. That's really the major difference because at the very end of the day, you're connected, and that's what matters is that connection. Because which kind of brings me into point number 2. Is that connection. If you don't have that connection with the higher power, it doesn't, all of that stuff doesn't even matter. You could say all day, like, I'm a Christian, but if you really don't have a connection to God, like, are you really? And we talked about this in, I follow a church in Oklahoma called Transformation Church, and it's really great. I've been following them for a while. And he talked about that because, of course, everything is virtual. And he said, what I want it to be is that if I can't preach, if I get up here and the internet goes out tomorrow, I want you to still have that connection with God. So we had a whole kind of series called Who's the Minister? Because at the very end of the day, like, yes, this man is anointed and up here teaching the word and doctrine of God. But at the very end of the day, if he was not, you still need to have that connection regardless. And so if you don't have that connection to the higher power, it doesn't matter if you don't subscribe to a religion, or it doesn't matter if you feel like that religion is ridiculous. If you don't have a connection, none of that even matters. And then I guess the last thing I'll say is it's all about intention. So if your intention behind what you're doing is wrong, it does not matter if you subscribe to a religion or if you don't subscribe to a religion. So like with Cidnee, if she had a bad intention behind her tarot reading, then yes, like that would be bad. Or again, like for me, if I'm praying for someone's downfall, or if I'm praying for someone to get COVID because I don't like them, the intention behind it is bad. And it doesn't matter what religion I subscribe to or what religion she doesn't subscribe to, that intention behind it is what's bad. And when I think about it, I think about that game when we were kids. I don't even know the name. I don't even know if it had a name. It probably didn't even have a name. But it's that game that was on the playground, and it was like that red kind of looking dodgeball or a rubber ball that was on that string. And when you hit it, it would go around and around and around the pole. And if you hit it hard enough, it would keep going. If not, you would have to keep hitting it. So how I think about it is, if you have that connection, because there's a couple different pieces to that game. There's the ball, which is connected to the string, which is connected to the top of the pole. And that's how it keeps going. So you can almost think of the pole or the top of the pole as God. And then you can think of the string as your connection. And then you can think of you as the rubber ball. So like, for example, with me, I told you guys I just couldn't pray because I didn't have anything to say. But because somebody hit me hard enough, or because I hit myself hard enough, because I had that connection with God, it just kept going and going and going. And it didn't have to keep getting hit, because again, I wasn't praying. I wasn't doing any of that, but my connection was still with him. Like I being the ball and having that connection to the string, to the pole, he was still there with me, even though I wasn't fully present with him. He was still fully present with me. So I was still going around and around and around that pole. And that was able to get me through those hard times when I was in a corner, or get me through those times when I was on the floor, because I was still going around that pole, even though I just got hit once really, really hard, because I had created that connection to God, to the pole. And so you can kind of think about it like that if you just create that strong enough connection. So if somebody hits you strong enough that you can keep going around that pole, that connection is what's going to matter. And that's going to keep you going, because I kept going even when I didn't feel like it. I kept going even when I wanted to give up. And so by having that connection, I was still able to go around that pole, and I was still able to be connected to God, even when I wasn't, even though nobody hit me again, quote unquote. I still had that connection. I was still going around that pole. And even when you get all the way around that pole, it starts unraveling, and you're still going and going and going. And that's what kept me going through. And that's what's going to keep you going through when you're grieving, when you don't feel like you're connected, or when you feel like you can't go on, or you're in those dark corners, or you're sad, or you're confused, or you don't understand. Regardless of if you keep getting hit multiple times, you get hit hard one time, it's still going to keep you connected, and you're still going to keep going. And so thank you guys for listening. I'm really just, this episode was really great because I've been wanting to talk about it, and I didn't know how I wanted to talk about it, and I didn't want it to be controversial, but I'm like, it's something that needs to get talked about, because it's just such this taboo thing to talk about, or there's such a East Coast West Coast battle about it, and as we can see, it's none of that. So thank you guys so much for listening to another week's episode of This Too Shall Suck podcast, where we talk about the real of grief, the whole grief, and nothing but the grief. This episode was produced by Mike Sick, and our original music is produced by Jimmy Samaj. You can follow me on social media on Instagram at TTSSPod, and you can visit my website at thistooshallsuckpodcast.com. Also, feel free to drop me a line about any questions or topics you may want to hear, or just to say what's up at hello@thistooshallsuckpodcast.com. Wherever you are listening, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe, and share this podcast with someone you think it could help. As always, I love you guys, and I'm sending you love and light in your life because you deserve it. I'll see you on the next episode. Mwah.